Good afternoon. Hello, everybody. I love it when people say hello back, so thank you for that. It makes me feel like I'm not alone up here. I'm Stesha Brandon. I'm the Literature and Humanities Program Manager here at the Seattle Public Library. And as we begin today, I want to acknowledge respectfully that we are gathered on the ancestral lands of many indigenous peoples, particularly those of the Coast Salish region. This includes the Duwamish, Suquamish, and Muckleshoot peoples, among others, who have lived in relationship with the land and waters of the Puget Sound since time immemorial. I'll also mention that the library is a great place to find resources if you're interested in learning about colonization and its impacts on Native people and their lands. Welcome to today's program presented with our friends at Mountaineer Books and Elliott Bay Book Company. I have a couple quick announcements before we get started. First, I'd like to thank the library's event sponsors, the Gary and Connie Kunis Foundation and the Seattle Times for their generous support of library programs. Thank you as well to the Seattle Public Library Foundation, whose support helps the library provide free programs and services to everyone in our community. We have assistive listening devices that are available on the table by the door. If you find during the program that you need a headset, you can give me a little wave and I will grab one for you, or if you just want to pop back to the table, Ryan is at the table and can help you. We'll wave, yeah. There's going to be a Q&A after the event, and because we have two speakers, what we're going to do is have you raise your hand, they'll call on you, and then they'll repeat the question for everybody to hear. And finally, you received a survey when you came in. We would really appreciate it if you took a minute to fill it out after the event, and you can turn it in as we head out into the afternoon. Now I am delighted to introduce today's speakers. Kathryn embraces her naturalist tendencies through hiking, birding, community science, and swimming in cold mountain lakes. She blogs about the natural world for Vashon Nature Center and authored a Seattle Times series called Natural Wanders. Her work has also appeared in Sunset and Alaska Airlines magazines, and she lives on Vashon Island. Maria Dolan has written about bats, orcas, ocean acidification, living shorelines, bowes swifts, and the smell of a moose for publications including Slate, Smithsonian, City Lab, the Seattle Times, Sierra, Seattle Magazine, NCIA, and Salon, and she lives in Seattle. They are here today to talk about Seattle Field Guide, Explore Nature in the City, a fun, accessible guide to 38 nature-filled outings across the greater Seattle area. They are going to talk about the book, they'll take some of your questions, and then after the book signing, there is an optional guided walk to the waterfront. So I encourage you to hang out. If you're getting a book signed, hooray. If you want to go stay for the walk, hooray for that too. So please help me welcome Kathryn and Maria.
Thank you so much, Stesha, for your kind introduction, and welcome everyone. It's so great to see all of you here. I'm Maria, and this is Kathryn, and we're so excited and honored that you're here to learn about Seattle Field Guide and about the plants and animals that we share our city with. We can't wait to tell you all about the book, and we hope you'll stay for the fun-filled walk along the waterfront at the end of our presentation and signing. There's really so much to see on this walk. And first, we'd like to thank our amazing publisher, Mountaineers Books. It's a local indie publisher, and we'd like to thank Elliott Bay Books for being here. They are, there's John over there in the corner with our books, and they're our awesome local independent bookstore. And of course, we're thrilled to be here at the Seattle Public Library. I personally am a lifelong patron of the Seattle Public Library, and around age 7, I started about age 7 checking out gigantic stacks of children's books at the Queen Anne branch, and this is the honor of a lifetime based on that experience. So I'm a little bit apologetic though because I have a few overdue books, so I really will return those soon. And now it's just like you a quick overview of this afternoon. We're going to spend about 40 minutes sharing a bit about how and why we wrote this book, and tell you some stories about some of our favorite discoveries in the process. Then we'll have about 15 minutes for questions, and we'd be happy to sign copies of the book before we head outside on the walk. And now, Kathryn's going to tell you a little bit about our book and how you can use Seattle Field Guide to get outside in this amazing season, but really all year round.
Yeah, thanks, Maria. Thanks, everyone, for being here on this beautiful day. And it's a little bit painful to come inside on that sunshine, so thank you for doing that. We'll get outside soon. I hope that you've had a chance to enjoy some of the photos that are behind you, just of the amazing creatures that we share the city with. And one of the reasons we wrote the book is so people could learn more about some of the just lesser known critters and plants that live among us. And the one thing we wanted to, I'll tell you a little bit about the book. There we go. Oops. I skipped. Uh-oh.
A very difficult, challenging clicker.
It's not. Back.
Is that, oh wait.
Oops, then I went too far back. I don't know what.
There we go.
There we go, sorry. Maybe I went too far. Okay, back to that. So the book features 38 outings, and it's arranged seasonally. And so you can get out all times of year. And we kind of search the city for nature standouts. We have things all the way up north at Magnuson Park and Carkeek, and lots of activities down in West Seattle, and then all the way down to Seward Park and Dead Horse Canyon, almost all the way to Renton. It's a book about places, but it's also a book about the plants, trees, marine mammals, butterflies, birds, amphibians, and fungi that we share the city with. And one thing we wanted to do is share with you a little bit about the, I think I might say, oh, there we go. Here, the things that you can see right now in Seattle. And some of you who were here a little bit earlier, we saw the falcon cam that's on the building, 1201 3rd Avenue, just about a block away, that we're going to look at the beginning of our walk. And there's two 3-week-old eyases, or baby peregrines, in the nest being fed by mom and dad. And it's pretty amazing that's happening right there. That's one of the outings in our book, in addition to talking about peregrines around the city and where you can see them hunting and raising young. You can hear sea lions roaring right now in the city. You can visit a heron colony where the chicks just hatched out in those nests over in Magnolia. You can listen to Pacific tree frogs singing, and you can also find alpine lilies blooming if you know where to look. And here's just a teaser of some of the things you might see if you go in search of those. That's one of the peregrine babies a couple of years ago, just about ready to fledge.
Oh, the heron. Yep. Oh, peregrine.
Yeah,
Peregrine.
it's on the
And
edge.
heron.
And so one thing that Maria and I, just in talking about this book, we just have a lot of questions about nature. So we set out to answer those, like, what is that crow doing? Is that a seal or a sea lion? Or why are there so many rabbits in Seattle? And we sought out naturalists and scientists around the city and went on a lot of walks and a few boat rides to try and answer those questions. And now Maria is going to tell you a little bit about what inspired the book in the first place.
Okay, yeah, so Kathryn and I have been friends for many years, and part of what drew us together in the first place is that we were both writers, and we were both interested in writing about nature subjects. And one of Kathryn's first stories she ever wrote about was about a big saltwater clam called the gooey duck. You may have tried, or at least seen. And mine was about a cloud expert at the University of Washington. So we share this love of learning and love of and interest in the natural phenomena around us. And we were both city people at that time, so we were interested in urban nature subjects. So at some point, we looked at each other and said, wouldn't it be cool if there was a book that talked about these things, that told us where to go, what to see, and what we might find when we get there, and explain that to us? And maybe you see where I'm going with this, because a couple of years later, we had written that book together, and that was our first book, and it was called Nature in the City. And we wrote that for Mountaineers. That was a very long time ago, and we never really stopped wanting to learn about and write about nature in the city. And that's what led us to write this second book for mountaineers so much later, and Seattle Field Guides, and that's the book we're going to talk about today. Writing a book is really a huge amount of work, but there's also a lot of fun to be had in a book, researching a book like this, and we had some pretty great stories, and Kathryn's going to share one of those, and much like the gooey ducks, it happens at the seaside.
So this outing is at Magnolia, and it's the Elliott Bay Marina. You may have seen it. It's kind of the sea of masts that's on the north end of Elliott Bay, but there's more than boats there. If you go down to Dock G, I kind of consider it a portal to another world, because you can walk down there. It's a public dock, and you have a chance to see an amazing array of creatures if you know how to do it. And it doesn't take too much equipment. You can actually just lay down on the dock like this to look. I have always been interested in what's growing on docks when I've just been on them. Like there's oftentimes you can see seaweed or crabs and things like that. I had no idea that a whole group of people love this as an activity, and they've named it dock fouling, and that's a funny term for it, but the term comes from what marina owners and boat owners don't like, and that is things growing all over their hulls and their pilings and getting in the way. They don't really like barnacles and mussels all over them. But the people who love it because those draw all kinds of other creatures in. And so once I started learning about it, I would go with people to take a look and see what we could see. And when you get down, you're only like a foot away from things. And it's kind of like tide pooling, but it doesn't matter what tide it is. You can go any time of year, and you can, if it's not too wavy, you can often see quite a bit of things. And we're so lucky to live on the edge of this saltwater sea, where just a foot and a half away from you, you have all these producers and consumers and decomposers all going around about their lives and contributing to the healthy ecosystem. And the last time I was at Magnolia, it was really clear, and it was quiet enough to hear a kingfisher hit the water to nab a fish in her bill. And there was hundreds of little fish called sticklebacks zooming around the pilings, and the water was this lovely aquamarine color, and I had a chance to see some of these amazing critters. This one up on the top is called a calcareous trumpet tubeworm, and it feeds with those feathery appendages, but if it gets startled by something that might eat it, it goes back into its tube about that quickly, and it pulls the door, which is that trumpet shape, on top of it to close it securely inside. The one in the middle is called a orange and white tipped nudibranch, and nudibranchs are sea slugs, which are shellless marine snails, and they're one of the highlights for me of dock fouling because they're so otherworldly. They come in all kinds of different shapes and colors and sizes, and they're just fascinating to watch. This one is sometimes called the candy corn nudibranch because it kind of looks like the Halloween treat. And I think it kind of looks like a balloon animal, but that's a pretty fun one to find. And then over there on the right, I don't know if that looks familiar to you, but this is a solitary sea squirt, and they're actually the closest on the family tree of life to us. We share the phylum Chordata with them. Their larvae have a rudimentary spinal cord, and so they're the closest relative of all of the marine invertebrates. And the more I look, I kind of like see a little bit of resemblance. But anyway, they're pretty fun to find. They look like little vases in the water. And when I was researching this or talk, I thought, why do I like to do this? Besides just finding these amazing, critters out there. And there's a few reasons that came to mind. And one of them is it really gives me hope to see so much life right here in our urban waters. The other reason is witnessing. I participate with a group on an online platform called iNaturalist, and anyone can do this. It's a biodiversity global platform where people share, photos and sightings and information, and that's just kind of a big term for nature geeks sharing information, and it's a great way to learn a lot and also just share things. And I like it because it's kind of a chance to honor this individual organism at this time in this place, and scientists can use that information now and in the future. Another reason is connection. I have a lot of friends who like to go dock fouling, and I meet new people who like to do it. And the last is learning. I always learn something new every time I go dock fouling.
I think it's just so fun, so transporting to realize that things like this are right here in the city that we can all go see. And we really love that accessibility. You can go for free, you can take a bus, you can take a bike, you can walk. And Seattle is actually special in that regard. Over, well, actually 99% of Seattleites live within a 10-minute Discovery Park. Some of these places are big, like Discovery Park, and sometimes they're very small. So Norris Woods is one of those small parks. It's just over a city lot in size, and it's in the Madrona neighborhood, which is east of downtown and stretches to Lake Washington shoreline. This park has a great backstory. It was named for a woman named Nora Wood, and she and her husband Fran lived nearby, and they were community activists, and they purchased the land to preserve it as green space. And they weren't able to create it themselves, but they did. They brought in the Trust for Public Land, and that organization and many devoted volunteers were able to realize Nora Wood's dream. And now anyone can wander on the winding paths and sit on a boulder or sit on a bench and look around and see really beautiful native plants, like this one in the center here. I don't know if you can see that heart shape. That's a bleeding heart. And you can also see some really wonderful birds and pollinators. For instance, this bird here, which is
Northern flicker.
Northern flicker. Sorry, I think turning with this microphone is causing me extra. It's okay. Okay, thank you. Thanks. Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you, Stacia. Yeah, so this bird on the right is a northern flicker, and I don't know if you can see how dapper it is. It has like a polka dotted plumage on its chest and a kind of like a black scarf on its neck, and I always look at it and think, I wish I could wake up in an outfit like that. Flickers are kind of woodpecker that will excavate a hole in an old tree like this one and use it as a nest, and so that's what this one's doing here. It's halfway in the nest. How many of you have seen a flicker or another kind of woodpecker in Seattle? Yeah, I'm not surprised most people have. And we have several woodpecker species here, but this one is the one you're most likely to see. And for one thing, it has a really loud call. Maybe you've heard that before. And for another thing, they also are unusual among woodpeckers in that they spend a lot of time on the ground. They eat ants, and they use their long tongue to lick up ants and other insects from the ground, and which I think if you've ever had an ant problem in your house, thank your local flickers to help take care of some of those. So here at Nora's Woods, you can see that flickers are thriving, and they need places like this to survive and thrive in the city, and birds and humans have this in common. Okay. Kathy Wolf, a social scientist right here at the University of Washington, spent much of her career researching the impact on our health of spending time in nature. And here's what she says about humans and health. Okay, go range. Studies have proven that even the smallest bit of nature, a single tree, a small patch of flowers, a houseplant, can generate health benefits. Look closely in your neighborhood, and the bit of nature you may have taken for granted up until now may become the focus of your attention and help you feel better. So we all really benefit. And I wanted to just share a few examples of their findings as well. Hospital patients with a view of a tree had an improved mood and shorter stays versus a view of a brick wall. Proximity to greenness is associated with a decrease in cardiovascular mortality. It's good for your heart. And about 20 to 30 minutes outdoors can significantly reduce cortisol or stress hormone levels in the body. So we really all benefit from these places, both for ourselves and for the larger urban community. And a big reason we wrote this book was to encourage you to go outside and enjoy these places that are right here, accessible right in the city, because I think we could all use stronger hearts and lower stress levels right now, don't you? So all of us can probably actually intuitively feel that when you go outside and your shoulders kind of drop and you feel better, maybe you breathe a little better. And Kathryn is going to share an experience she had with just that experience, yeah.
So I don't know if you guys all remember back in April 2020, but we all could have used a lot of trees at that time. And on top of the global pandemic, my elderly father broke his hip and ended up in the hospital. And because he needed an advocate, I was one of a handful of people allowed into the hospital. And that was such a strange time. We didn't know very much about COVID, and we were taking temperatures and wearing masks a certain way, and staying 6 feet apart, and people were wearing hazmat gear talking about the plague, and it was really overwhelming. But I was really glad I could be with my dad. And I remember one day in particular where he just had not been sleeping very well, and so he'd been up all night, and then he had kind of a restless morning, and he was finally able to drift off to sleep. And I took that moment to say, okay, I'm going to go out and get a little fresh air. And I headed out in search of some trees, and I ended up on the leafy, kind of open campus of Seattle University. And I was walking along, just trying to clear my head and let go of my worries, as you talked about, letting the shoulders drop. And I looked down, and I was just, my heart just leapt, because I found this shiny heart-shaped green leaf, and it just transported me back to the Cascade Mountains when my friend Norma introduced me to this plant. I always associated this plant with just really steep trails and mountain streams and mature conifers, and I didn't even know at that time that it grew at sea level. It's called wild ginger. Some of you may know it, and one of the things I love about it is if you rub the stem, it smells just like the spice ginger. And another thing about it that I love is it has these beautiful orchid-like flowers. And as I stood there looking, I thought, could I be so lucky as to see that? And I lifted up the leaves, and I found these flowers. And the more I looked, I could see under all of the leaves around where it was growing, there was just flowers, more flowers and flowers. And I just felt this immediate, kind of heart-lifting feeling. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to share it with my dad. And so I thought, well, how can I do that? I can't transport this back to him, but I could take some photos. So I took some photos, and I headed back to the hospital room, and it was so fun to share the experience with him, because he loved the hike in the Cascades too, and it just kind of, brought us both back to that moment. And so it was not only a healing gift for myself, but also for my dad. And so that is a good example of kind of the healing services of nature. And Seattle University campus has a lot more to offer besides that. It's one of the outings in our book, and Maria's going to tell you a little bit about that now.
Yeah. So I did several walks on this campus during our research. And for those of you who don't know, Seattle University is a private university, but it has an open campus and has quite a few fun places to visit, and trees and plants. And I actually walked with one of their gardeners, Sam, and he showed me all kinds of interesting little hidden spots and treasures that kind of make this place special. And one of them, for example, is the reason the wild ginger is here is that there is an ethnobotanical garden here called the Vi Hilbert Garden. And it's in one corner of the campus, and it was seeded, there we go, with native plants from around the area. And actually right around now is when a lot of those flowers are in bloom. So Vi Hilbert was an Upper Skagit tribal elder who had a very important role in documenting and preserving the Lushootseed, Central Coast Salish Lushootseed language. And I mentioned that this is an ethnobotanical garden. And ethnobotany is the study of the relationship between people and plants. So you can't read the plaque on this rock from where you're sitting, but here are a couple of important lines from that plaque, from the Vi Hilbert rock that's right in front of the garden. And it says, where you stand, a forest once stood. In and around this forest, people and plants lived closely together for many centuries. This garden invites you to learn more about this intimate, sustainable relationship and invites you to cultivate your own caring relationship with our native plants. So what a great opportunity. And then another great thing about this place is that they promote sustainable agriculture, and one way they do that is by having a pesticide and herbicide-free campus. And they have actually several places where people can pick seasonal fruit there. Behind one of the campus buildings, for instance, there's a very peaceful garden, and if you go in July, you might get some of the free blueberries they encourage visitors to eat. I don't know if you can see those up in the upper left corner. I snapped that picture, and then the blueberries disappeared right after. I'm not sure how that happened. Anyway, mark your calendar for July and go look for those. We tell you a lot more about this in the book. So this is kind of a quest if you're heading out looking for blueberries, and I find that a quest is a great way to get yourself to go outside and see something new. And some of my favorite walks are when I set out with a goal in mind. For example, let's see.
Maybe I should just have the computer and I could just change it there, if you don't mind, because then.
Pause for a moment while we
Yes, thank you.
move forward to our next pictures.
Thank you. Okay, there's our
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. So speaking of goals, so a couple of years back, I went to Carkeek Park to finally spot an animal I'd heard a lot about that has also an amazing comeback story, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. But first of all, for those of you who don't know Carkeek, it is a large park in northwest Seattle. It's in a ravine. It's very green and lush. There are lots of hiking trails, and it also has, you can hike for miles. It also has a great beach where you can go tide pooling, and if you're very lucky, you can see orca whales. That actually happened to me. I saw orcas from shore. There's a creek running through the park, and in the fall, you can go see a chum salmon run that goes right through that creek. So it even has a historic orchard, which I think is amazing. It's a great and amazing park. And this park story is that it was logged in the late 19th century, and the railroad company took the creek that was home to several different salmon runs and put it into a pipe. And they also, and all the salmon disappeared. They were making way for the railroad, and then they logged it. So it was a kind of a sad place, and it stayed a pretty sad place until it became one of Seattle's parks in the 1920s. And over a long period of time, many volunteers and park staff planted and cleaned up the park and even uncovered a portion of the creek. And so there's still salmon running there. Once again, salmon running there. And then what's really amazing is that there is actually a new volunteer crew that showed up a couple of years ago helping take care of the park. A beaver couple. So beavers are having a comeback in the most wonderful way after almost going extinct when colonists killed most of the estimated 200 to 400 million beavers in North America. That was mostly due to fur trapping. They have this amazing thick fur that repels water. And it was also because they changed the environment, and sometimes that means they change the land and the water in ways that humans don't like. So one of the ways they do that is by cutting down or chewing down trees. They're actually herbivores, and they eat all kinds of plant matter, and they need it to survive, and they need it to build and engineer their environments. But more and more, people understand that we need to coexist with beavers because they're actually really beneficial to the environment. They're known as water stewards or water keepers because they dam up running water and they create wetlands that help our ecosystems immensely. water in these ponds seeps down and filters into the ground, and it cools it and it cleans it, and then that water resurfaces as that cool, clean water that helps those young salmon to survive. And here's just a small list of what these creatures can do. So they engineer these amazing wetlands, as I mentioned, providing habitat for beavers and for salmon, and also for birds if you're a birder. They help counter the effects of climate change by cooling, cleaning, and storing the water. And they stop wildfires. And if you've ever wondered, where do animals go in a wildfire? Well, if there's a beaver wetland there, that's where they go, and the wetland stays damp. As one of our foremost beaver researchers in the United States, Emily Fairfax, says, burning areas where beavers built their dams is like trying to light a big old soggy sponge on fire. So that's just a small list of what these creatures can do, and they're just amazing animals and really fun to watch if you're lucky enough to spot them, which brings me back to my quest. So I went out several times to find beavers in Carkeek Park, and I would look all around and I would see their handsome stick-built lodges, and I would see these gnawed-on trees, and I would never spot them. And I even went on an owl and beaver walk one night, sponsored by the Parks Department, figuring, well, I'm going to see one tonight. But no, we saw all the signs, but no actual owls, no beavers, just they did not want anything to do with us. So beavers do tend to emerge around twilight. So I've been there many times, but they work the night shift, and I've been there during the day, and I had not spotted them. But I was there one day, and I thought, well, there's a chance. So I thought, I'm going to walk over to the wetland, just take a look. So staring at the beaver lodge, the lovely beaver lodge, thinking, oh, we'll see one go in or out. Let me see. And as I was looking at that lodge, I heard this loud munching sound from over here. What in the world is that? And I turned, and right there, like less than 20 feet away, a beaver was just right there in the pond, kind of partway out. I could see kind of part of its paddle tail and the big orange front teeth, and he or she was just gnawing away at some willows on the side of the pond. And my quest was gratified, and if that's something you want to see, we have, in our book, we have all kinds of places in the city you can go look for them. And actually, I know anyway, find your own quest. It's a great way to be outside. And Kathryn's going to tell you about another place where she had an animal encounter. Some might call it a thrilling encounter.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Okay. So some of you may know of Union Bay Natural Area. It's 74 acres of amazing, birding spots just tucked behind the University of Washington Stadium. And it has 4 miles of shoreline, Lake Washington shoreline. It has grasslands and ponds and woodlands, and for this reason, it's just one of the prime birding spots in Seattle. It also has amazing views of Mount Rainier, but that doesn't help with the birding. But it's the one thing I like about going back to these places over and over is it never gets old. Even if you go day after day, it's essentially like you're never walking the same trail or the same stretch of shoreline twice, because there's always something new, and sometimes something really surprising happens. And that happened to me this one day. I was standing here. I had been going birding with my daughter, and we'd seen a great variety of water birds, including these amazing birds called northern shovelers that are named because they have this huge bill that looks like a shovel. And when they're feeding, they chase each other around in a super tight circle to stir up the nutrients in the water. And so they're making almost like a whirlpool. And whenever I see that, I just feel like it makes my day. I'm ready to go home now. And so I felt like I was very fulfilled in our trip, but my daughter really wanted to go see some other things. So I was waiting for her here on this bridge and looking up the canal. And all of a sudden, this blur of motion in my peripheral vision made me turn my head. And this small animal was running towards me at top speed. It was coming so quickly, I couldn't even see what it was. And I was standing there just kind of stunned, and it was coming so fast, I thought, is it just going to run up the front side of my body and on the back like a cartoon. But right when it got to my feet, it scaled that small wall of the bridge and dove into the water. And as it dove, I could see it was a rabbit. And my first thought was, can rabbits swim? And I looked over and it was just very deftly like bunny paddling to shore. And there's the rabbit. Not the rabbit, but anyway, a Seattle rabbit. And so it made it to shore, and I was really glad because I do not know bunny CPR. And so there it was, and as I was looking at it, I felt something staring at me, and over to my right was the reason that bunny was going so quickly. And that coyote looked so miffed. It's like, okay, that was dinner, and now I just felt like it almost was shaking its head at me. And then it just kind of trotted off down the canal, like, okay, whatever. And so it was just, I will never forget the look in that coyote's eyes or that rabbit's frantic high dive.
Sometimes you save a life or disrupt a meal just by going outside. See how important it is? I just wanted to add a tiny bit of history about this place, the Union Bay Natural Area, because when you visit here, you walk through this very diverse and environmentally rich environment, and it used to be Seattle's largest garbage dump. So that dump was established on top of this fertile marshland, and then when the dump closed in 1966, many people and many volunteers spent a long time working on this degraded area and turned it into this habitat that we could all enjoy, and that became really such a birding hotspot. And my point is that this is not a pristine, untouched environment. It's actually a place that required decades of work by many people over a long period of time. And you may have noticed that that's a theme that runs throughout this presentation. There's all these places in the city need our attention and they need our involvement. And in researching Seattle Field Guide, we were so grateful and amazed all the time by how many groups all over the city are actually working on these projects and taking care and creating places where we can all go outside. And maybe your quest involves going out and helping or planting a tree or just going out and enjoying these places, maybe on a group walk. And so we created a resources section in the back of the book. And if you go there, we have all kinds of ways you can kind of plug in and get involved in whatever way suits you. And we have a slide here that shows some of the amazing volunteer work that happened in Seattle just in 2025. And this is just one of many data points out there so that we know there's a lot more. But one of my favorites here is that almost 60,000 plants were planted, including almost 7,000 trees were planted by volunteers. So it's just such a great number, I think. Yeah.
That's a lot of digging.
That is a lot of digging.
And it's a lot more oxygen for all of us. So thanks to the volunteers who did that, and some of you may be those people. Oops, I just went forward. So the one thing I wanted to just do quickly is just talk about some of the groups who do this work. The River Access Paddle Program is a group that does regular cleanups on the Duwamish River. I was lucky enough to be able to go with them out on one of these, and it felt so great to just help clean up the river. But I also got to see nesting purple martins. That's our largest swallow. And I got to see river otter tracks on one of Seattle's original islands. And actually that informed one of the outings in our book, which is a kayak paddle on the Duwamish. You can also join people in replanting Lincoln Park's working on reforesting that park. You can hook up with people at the Green Seattle Partnership. They have projects going all over the city. The other thing, as Maria had pointed out, there's a lot of activities, many of them free, going on. Birds Connect has neighborhood Seattle walks almost every week in different neighborhoods. Seattle Parks has started a new Rec in the Streets program, and that involves a lot of different projects, but some of them are nature related. You can go on nature walks at different cemeteries and parks around the city, and or you can find a poetry workshop or other kinds of activities in parks. There's also So Many Friends group. You may have know of one in your neighborhood park. We just want to give a shout out to them because they do so much work to keep our city and our parks and green spaces beautiful. And if you don't know if your park has one, you can find out, or maybe And so, speaking of thanks, we just wanted to say thank you to all of our friends and family who helped make this book happen. We also wanted to thank Jim Deers and Paul Edmondson for filling in some of our blanks of photos we really needed with their beautiful photography. We wanted to thank Alex Coriath, my daughter, for technical support. And also, we have amazing gratitude for all the people who answered our many questions along the way. So, speaking of questions, we are now ready to answer yours. So.
Yes.
The rabbits.
The rabbits.
The rabbits.
Yes.
Yes.
So, I mean, I know that in Woodland Park there was just a little den and that they're European rabbits, right?
Yes. Someone wanted to ask
Eastern
about where the rabbits come
Yeah.
from.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Yes, yeah, so they asked, the question was, where did the rabbits come from? Is that your question?
Basically. No, not so much where they came from, because I know they were like dumped, right, by a little Easter bunny. Well, maybe I'm wrong. Not the Easter bunny.
Dumped by an
Easter
Easter
bunny.
Could be. I didn't know that one.
Yeah.
We needed to dig deeper, I guess. Yeah. We had do we have a fact about that? We have,
Yes. Yeah. I think it was in the 1930s. People brought them for game animals, and then they escaped from their pens, and then they're, as you know, breeding like rabbits, they make their way around everywhere.
yeah. But I have heard about that as well. I mean, some people do dump their rabbits, you know.
Yeah, but I didn't know about the game house.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Good question.
Anyone else have a
Anyone else
question?
have a question? No?
Yes.
You spoke of, I think, a website early on that you can send pictures to.
Oh, yeah.
What is that website again?
Oh, yes. The question is about the website I mentioned that's a global biodiversity network. It's called iNaturalist, just the letter I. And it is, if you look that up, you'll find out about it, and anyone can submit photos, and it's a great resource too. So, and if you have any other questions about it, I'd be happy to answer them. Yeah, yeah. And someone, oh yeah.
Yeah, your dock fouling made me think of this question. Do you know, are sea stars making a comeback in our waters? Or
That's a
are they
good
still
question.
struggling?
The question was whether sea stars are making a comeback, and in 2013, we started having this horrible wasting disease that stretched from Alaska all the way to California, and 20 different sea star species, and billions of animals representing like 20 different species all died off, and they finally were able to discover just last year that it was a bacteria that was causing this illness, so they could start to research how to address it. But luckily, many of the sea stars are starting to come back. The ochre stars, the purple and orange ones that you see a lot, I've started to see them. In fact, we saw some on the waterfront when we were scouting the walk earlier this week, and those are beginning to be seen on rocks around the beaches. The one that's having the hardest time coming back that they're actually trying to do some reintroduction by raising them in the lab are the sunflower stars. They have 24 arms and they're really fast, I mean, for sea stars. And they are, but I did hear some good news recently that they've been found in some places, you know, so they are starting to come back, so that's a really good sign.
Anyone have any other question? Oh, yeah.
Can you give some advice on walking Vashon? I walk a lot in the city, and Vashon just is, it seems hostile to walking.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. This, it's a,
How do you walk 10 miles on Vashon?
that is a really good question. Without bringing a car, yeah. The question is, how do you walk on Vashon Island without a car? Because it is hostile to walkers in that it's a 2-lane highway with a lot of cars, and everyone's really happy to race off the ferry and get where they're going. And I think the best thing to do would be look at the Vashon Maury Land Trust website. They have a lot of trails that they support, and to get off of the road, you can definitely walk, and many of those are connected, so you can walk for many miles. I'd be happy to give you some more advice. The other thing you could do on a low tide, you could actually walk down the ramp by the ferry dock and take quite a nice walk along the water to that'd be to the south. Well, actually, both would be to the south, towards the southeast, and you could go a long way that way on the beach. Yeah, yeah, sure.
Is there anyone else? Oh, yes.
Yeah. Oh, so the question is, if I understand correctly, what is the smallest size acreage that, that park, to make parkland viable? And then this is as far as Seattle parks?
Yes, it could be wild and
Gosh, I don't really know the answer to that question, but one thing that comes to mind, and you may have an answer. Street ends? Yeah. One thing that comes to mind is that people who have, for example, a little, I don't know if this is answering your question, but people who plant a lot of plants for like pollinators in their parking strips or in their backyards or gardens can actually contribute to pathways that pollinators and birds and things can use. And so in a way, my first response to your question is it can be very small and make a big impact. Yes, because they could try and connect these corridors, but even having a really healthy backyard or even plants on a porch of an apartment that have food and draw animals can contribute to those green spaces. But I'm not sure if that's what you meant. It might be more of a Seattle Parks question.
Can I add a little bit on?
Yes.
It's just like, are urban trees doing anything here?
Our open, what?
Are urban
Trees.
Like
Oh, I think you know.
are urban trees
Yes.
helpful?
The fact that, there are trees in Seattle where they spend a lot of time and effort, like putting trees on, they're pretty and everything, but are they doing
Mhm.
anything
Oh, yeah.
towards?
Oh, how are they helping the environment? Oh,
The environment part, I think, is clear because they reduce, the tree canopy reduces the temperature. I think that part's understood.
yes.
But are they doing anything to help the wildlife?
To help the
The
wildlife.
wildlife.
Oh, do trees help wildlife?
Urban trees.
Urban trees help urban wildlife. Okay, so I mean, I'll just take one example. Like a big leaf maple in the city is this incredible pollen creator that attracts all kinds of pollinators, and we need pollinators, right? They're on the decline. So whether it's in a city or in the country, that's a tree that's doing an incredible amount for wildlife. So birds eat insects, which are hummingbirds are pollinators too. They come to the like a big leaf maple tree, and you saw that tree with that snag, that old tree that had a bird nest in it. So all those woodpeckers we talked about are using those as nests. Is that the kind of thing you're asking about? There's all kinds of ways trees are important to the city, not just for lowering for carbon and oxygen and all of that, but yeah, for wildlife as well, for sure, in multiple ways. Great question, though. Yeah.
I have a follow-up on that one. Sorry. I imagine you guys walking around just loving nature and stumbling upon parks. And is there a spot in the city where you're like, oh my God, this place needs a park? But it sounds like, yeah, it's like it's so kind of
Good question.
cement everywhere. But I think what this gentleman is saying, or you're saying, is you can just plant your own pollinators and have your own little park. There's not one kind of too small. Does that make sense? Because you're talking about Car Keep, Discovery,
Yeah.
These beautiful,
Yeah.
huge places that we can go. Is there, like, I guess the CE, is there something in there that's like, oh my God, this place needs a park? Oh, it's beautiful.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyways, just wondering if you know a place that needs a park.
Well, I guess what I'd say is
The question is there a place in Seattle that really needs a park that we found?
thank you. I guess what I'd say is I can't speak for the neighbors. Hopefully the neighbors in these places are interested in these. What I've noticed is kind of building on what you asked about is I have found that very small parks like Norris Woods, or like I live in Northwest Seattle, and there's so many small little like corner parks, places where kids can play, but also they draw animals and plants, and I've found those are really valuable just in a community sense. So like even here downtown, when we were looking for places, I mean the land is valuable, but hey, there's some empty office buildings. Maybe there's some little spots where you do something. I don't know. It's a great question. Do you know of anywhere that's really stood out to you? I think if you live in the neighborhood, you notice more than
I guess one thing I would say is that there's a lot of parks along the Duwamish River, and they need more people to come to them because they're amazing and they have kind of amazing views and they have stories that they tell and there's salmon there returning, but it can feel a little like it's so industrial, like these pockets of parks are between all these buildings. So I guess that's one thing that's kind of an interesting thing that comes to mind, like just finding out about some of these places that you might not have gone before and seeing them because they are, and the statistics that Maria shared about 99% of people in Seattle being, is it a 10-minute walk?
10-minute walk.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. So anyway. Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
just
okay,
one more.
good.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, he was. Can we say two more because he
Can we,
let a follow up?
can we talk to you on the walk? Are you coming on the walk? Okay.
So thank you for writing this book.
You're welcome.
Obviously a labor of love, and I know how much work and effort it takes to put something as comprehensive as this together. So with all this effort, do you envision or see other forms of what you collected in, right? This is a written hardback form. Is there other things, ways you see it being manifested, like independent walks that the Parks Department sponsors?
Yeah, that's a good question. She asked whether there was a way that we envisioned the book having other ways of manifesting in the world, beyond the written page. Beyond our walks that we have scheduled right now, we don't have plans for that, but I'm hoping that I don't know what that would be. I guess I'm kind of like, we're in this busy part right now of sharing it, and I do hope that it has a life beyond that, but I don't really know how that will take shape.
Yeah. I guess I think when you say that, I think, well, yeah, not everyone probably knows, but we have this walk today, but we also have a walk at Birds Connect Seattle, which is downtown. We'll be doing that later in June, and we have one at the Seward Park Audubon that'll be in Seward Park, which will be a very cool opportunity to see all kinds of things, including lots of trees, big old trees, and so I think the walks, it would be great to do more. I think it's really fun to be able to learn while you're outside. You kind of get more benefits, right? If you're out walking while you're talking. But I'd love to think. Are you coming on the walk? Okay. Well then we can talk about ideas. Okay. I think is that.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone.